UFO over Moscow. The morning of October 27th over Moscow began with a phenomenon that too many people saw simultaneously to attribute to an optical error. A bright object flew over several towns in the Moscow region: Ramenskoye, Fryazino, Krasnogorsk, and Lyubertsy. It didn't move like a fireball. It didn't leave a typical trail, and it disappeared as suddenly as it had appeared, as if cutting a short streak of light from the sky. For the first few hours, no one explained anything. Meteorites are usually identified faster than the first video appears on social media. Here, silence. And at precisely that moment, a strange coincidence occurred. NASA removed data from its website about asteroid 2025 US6, which was expected to make a close approach to Earth in those days. If it wasn't that, why remove the information? The theory about a Chinese satellite was dismissed almost immediately. The object's shape didn't match any list of space debris, and its trajectory didn't match either. And then attention shifted to the Russian Academy of Sciences. 5 days after the incident, academics reported that the object had broken into pieces and fallen in the Novgorod and Tver regions. But even this version sounded unusual. They called it a bright iron or ironstone bolide, although the flashes described by eyewitnesses are not typical for such a composition. And most importantly, they again mentioned non-standard orbital features. If it really was a bolide, then why did NASA's data disappear? Why did the reports appear only several days later? And why did no one report the explosions in the Novgorod region, which should have been heard by dozens of populated areas? Ufologists have put forward a straightforward theory. Part of the craft may have made an emergency landing. It was perhaps monitored in advance, including by NASA. And if so, it's not surprising that the information was quickly removed and the crash site was sealed. There are no official answers. But the combination, a bright object with an unusual trajectory, deleted data, delayed comments, and 2 falling regions, looks too strange to ignore. Why was butter buried in a bog? In the peat bogs of Ireland and Scotland, archaeologists regularly find strange hoards, barrels and bundles of butter. They are hundreds and even thousands of years old. The butter doesn't look like food, but rather like a dense, dark mass with a pungent odor. And each time, the same question arises. Why did people voluntarily bury such a valuable product in a bog? For a long time, it was believed that these were ritual sacrifices. Bogs in Northern Europe were often used for offerings to the gods, with weapons, jewelry, and even people thrown into them. Butter, a symbol of wealth and prosperity, was perfectly suitable for such rituals. But the problem is that there are too many finds. Over the past 200 years, more than 400 cases have been documented. For a rare ritual, this is suspiciously frequent. Later, another theory emerged, a practical one. Peat bogs are almost devoid of oxygen and rich in acids. In such an environment, bacteria that cause decay are practically inactive. Experiments have shown that meat and fat stored in peat for several months have pathogen levels comparable to those found in a modern freezer. For people of the Bronze and Iron Ages, this was the ideal natural refrigerator. But even here, not everything fits. Some barrels were buried too deeply and carefully, as if they were never intended to be removed. A third hypothesis emerged: fermentation. Buried butter changed its composition, taste, and aroma. Modern tasters described it as having mushroom and smoky notes. In other words, the bog could have served as a storage facility, a laboratory, and a sanctuary all at once. And each new barrel leaves the question open. Was it buried to preserve, to transform, or to give away forever? Amber Bowl. This magnificent amber bowl, which is approximately 3,270 years old, was found in a large round barrow in Hove, England during excavations in 1856. Amber, a material known for its beauty and associated with the sun and life force, was used in ancient times not only for decoration, but also for ritual purposes. The discovered bowl, according to researchers, could have been a high-status item belonging to an important member of society or a chieftain. Creating such a bowl required exceptional skills because amber is a fragile material and working with it requires patience and skill. The discovered bowl shows that people of that time had access to rare and valuable materials, which also confirms the existence of trade links and exchange with other regions. The fact that the bowl was buried with its owner speaks of its significance for funerary rites or belief in the afterlife. Maya and extraterrestrial civilizations. how to explain the presence of artifacts depicting spaceships, a calendar that is valid to this day, and absolutely smooth crystal skulls. And all this in a civilization about which official history says otherwise. The secret may be in extraterrestrial visitors. Yes, you heard me right. One of the Mayan gods, Kukulkan, whom the Aztecs knew as Quetzalcoatl, could supposedly be an alien from another planet. He taught the Maya such complex sciences as agriculture, mathematics, medicine, and astronomy. And the Maya knew about the planets, which were discovered only a few centuries later. In the 30s of the last century in Guatemala, scientists discovered a sandstone head, which is now impossible to study since it was used as a target during military operations. But it brings even more intrigue to our story, as its facial features are not at all like the Maya and other peoples in that area. But did you know that many of the Mayan books burned, according to legend, actually ended up in the Vatican? It was they who were used to create the Gregorian calendar, which is currently used throughout the world. All these facts only confirm that the Maya could communicate with an extraterrestrial civilization. Scarab with a request to the heart. The Metropolitan Museum of Art's collection contains a small artifact that was once used not for decoration, but for protection. This is a heart scarab, an amulet placed in the tomb of a woman named Hatnefer. It is approximately 3,500 years old. The scarab is carved from dark stone, and on its underside is a text from the Book of the Dead. Not a prayer for salvation, not a request to the gods, but an appeal to one's own heart. The Egyptians believed that it was the heart that would testify at the judgment of Osiris, where the soul was weighed, and if the heart accuses, the soul would perish. Therefore, the text asks the heart to remain silent, not to argue, not to remember bad deeds. Do not rise against me as a witness. Do not invent lies. Let all be well with me. It is a very personal request, almost like a conversation with oneself inscribed on stone. The amulet was part of the ritual. It was placed on the chest of the deceased to ensure that the heart would behave calmly and justly at the decisive moment. Hatnefer's scarab was perfectly preserved. And when you look at these lines, it becomes clear. Ancient people also feared the judgment of their own conscience. Zone 21, Eco Museum. There's a place in Cusco that even archaeologists speak of with caution. Zone 21 isn't a museum, but a site where everything is too technological for the Inca era. There are stone platforms there so smoothly worked, as if the stone was cut not by a primitive tool, but by something with a perfectly controlled vibration. Nearby are strangely shaped blocks that don't resemble temples or outbuildings. The angles are too precise, the surfaces too smooth, and the marks look like the imprints of machinery. Local legends call this zone the place where the gods of light descended, and the strangest thing is that flashes of light are regularly detected above these slabs, thin vertical pillars that appear for a few seconds. Drones detect fluctuations in the magnetic field, and compasses seem to float there, as if something is hidden beneath the stone. Scientists call all this unexplored geological features, but they themselves admit Zone 21 is too out of context, too smooth, too neat, too reminiscent of the work of someone who knew how to work stone differently than the people of the 13th century. Friendship between the inhabitants of ancient Egypt and aliens. The topic of the connection between ancient Egypt and UFOs is a subject of interest to many researchers and paranormal enthusiasts. Many facts remain speculation, but there are also details that defy logical explanation. In some temples and pyramids, you can find drawings reminiscent of modern ideas about UFOs. The most famous example is the image on the walls of the Temple of Ramesses II at Abu Simbel. On one of the walls, researchers found an image of a flying saucer with a round shape and strange aerodynamic characteristics. Other evidence includes numerous papyrus records about UFOs. One of them is translated as follows: "And a circle of fire appeared in the sky. It had no head, but a terrible stench came out of its mouth. Its body was huge. It was voiceless." A little scary, isn't it? Similar records belong to a chronicler who lived 3,500 years ago. He claimed that the sky was covered with fiery discs, but the pharaoh did not chicken out and did not allow the soldiers to flee, after which the flying objects disappeared in an instant. Concepts such as winged shields and discs of fire appear repeatedly in ancient Egyptian written religious sources. Iron was practically unmined in ancient Egypt and was a rare metal, but writings often mention iron thrones, scepters, and clothing intended for the pharaoh. The sun god was dressed in metal and sat on a throne of iron and fire, which also sounds quite strange. The Abydos hieroglyphs discovered in the hall of the funeral temple of Pharaoh Seti deserve special attention. Here, ufologists noticed a helicopter, a submarine, a glider, and an airship. For a long time, photographs of the find were considered falsified, but soon their authenticity was confirmed. There were suggestions that the inhabitants of ancient Egypt were able to look into the future, while other scientists believed that aliens traveled in time and simply told them about the events of the 20th century. Skeptics categorically deny such ideas, believing that the images were the result of the superposition of two hieroglyphic inscriptions, which suffered destruction of the plaster between them. There is another, no less amazing drawing where a flying disc drops an aerial bomb, but critics here have their own logical explanation. Faces on Mars. An amazing trip to the Red Planet. Mars awaits us. In 1976, the Viking 1 probe circling Mars took a picture of a pile of rocks that look a lot like a human face. NASA has labeled it an enormous rock formation that resembles a human head. At that time, some people thought that this face was the remnant of an alien civilization, and the neighboring stones were the ruins of their city. Of course, NASA scientists quickly concluded that the face was just a play of light and shadow, but the idea has spread through culture, appearing in books, movies, and TV shows. The face on Mars is located in a region known as the Cydonia region, between the planet's southern highlands and the smoother northern plains. Some scientists think that this area was once close to the vast Martian Ocean when the planet had enough atmosphere to keep water on the surface. Later, in 1998, NASA's Mars Global Surveyor probe took more detailed pictures of the face. All subsequent high-quality images confirmed the initial analysis. The assumption of a face is an optical illusion due to a specific angle of incidence of light on the surface of the rocks. The illusion rock itself, about a mile across, resembles the cliffs or mesas of the western United States and is likely formed from a combination of landslides and accumulated debris. And while the face on Mars is one of the most popular sites, it's far from the only group of rocks resembling terrestrial features. Viking captured several other fascinating images, including Gal Crater in the southern highlands, which is shaped like a smiling face. Such structures, of course, do not indicate the presence of alien life. On Earth, too, formations can be found, such as New Hampshire's Old Man of the Mountain, which create aesthetically pleasing images without alien interference. On the other hand, right now in the United States, they are declaring that they have real evidence of alien life. And at the moment, they confirm their words with an oath on the Bible, promising to show alien transport and biomaterial. Blade recipe. About 4,000 years ago in the southern Urals, there existed a culture long considered primitive for the Bronze Age. Settlements, pottery, weapons, nothing out of the ordinary. Until scientists decided to carefully examine metal found at one of the burned-out settlements. More than 100 objects were studied: axes, spears, knives, sickles, jewelry, and even ingots. Analysis revealed a strange pattern. These objects weren't cast haphazardly. Each type of object used a specific metal composition, as if the craftsman knew exactly what alloy was needed. Weapons and battle ornaments were made of bronze with a high tin content, hard, durable, and capable of holding an edge for a long time. But tools that needed to be sharpened frequently were cast from almost pure copper, softer but more practical. This wasn't a coincidence or luck, but a stable technological system. The most unexpected discovery came next. Tin, necessary for such alloys, is almost never found in the Urals. Traces of micro-impurities revealed that the metal came from far away, from the Altai Mountains and from areas of modern-day Kazakhstan. These are, in fact, trade routes that connected vast expanses of Eurasia long before the advent of civilizations familiar to us. The settlement where all this was discovered was destroyed in a fire and abandoned. But it was precisely this catastrophe that preserved the metal and revealed what was usually hidden. These are not primitive blacksmiths, but people who worked according to recipes, passed on knowledge, and participated in a complex system of exchange. And suddenly the Bronze Age no longer seems primitive. Burning UFO over Canada. 2018 Quebec. While on a walk and enjoying their vacation, the family noticed a strange object in the sky and decided to film it. An inexplicably shaped object was slowly rotating, glowing with green and bright red lights. Casual spectators were amazed, realizing that they had witnessed something truly strange and unusual. At first glance, it might seem that this is a spaceship burning fuel while gaining altitude. Canada is one of the few countries that officially records UFO data. As they collect data, they publish surprising findings and images, causing skeptics to doubt that humanity is the only superior race in the universe. The object caught in the video has no visible means of movement and exhibits anti-gravity properties, hovering in the air for some time. The absence of wings and exhaust gases proves that this is not an aircraft. Some skeptics tried to justify this with natural phenomena as an optical illusion, but on this day the weather was beautiful and it was clearly noticeable that this object was three-dimensional. A close guess suggests that the object was a hot air balloon with a mirror surface, but is this true? Perhaps we are simply denying the obvious, afraid to admit that aliens exist and they are already among us? Fragments of alien technology. Harvard University professor Avi Loeb suggests that he found particles of extraterrestrial technology in a meteorite that fell in 2014 off the coast of Papua New Guinea. These fragments were taken to Harvard for examination, and the U.S. Space Command confirmed with a 99.99% probability that the material came from another solar system. Loeb and his team traveled to the site of the meteorite impact on the ship Silver Star. They discovered 10 spherules, metallic balls colored gold, blue, and brown, some of which resembled a miniature Earth. Analysis showed that the spherules contain 84% iron, 8% silicon, 4% magnesium, and 2% titanium. Loeb emphasized that these materials were stronger than space rocks ever recorded by NASA and were moving at a speed of 60 kilometers per s, which is faster than 95% of all stars near the Sun. These results suggest the possible artificial nature of the spherules, which could provide unique insights into materials beyond our solar system. The researchers suggest that the spherules may be part of a larger find, which they plan to explore in future expeditions. Roswell Discamwalk. The Roswell disk is a mystical artifact rumored to have been found near Roswell, New Mexico after the famous 1947 UFO incident. According to some reports, the disk was part of the wreckage of an unidentified flying object. The disk was a round metal plate with a diameter of about 3 meters, with unusual symbols and markings on the surface that could not be attributed to any known terrestrial language. The material from which the disk was made turned out to be unidentified and had strange properties. Some sources claim that the disk was given into military hands and studied in secret laboratories. Those who have been able to see it have spoken of its potential connection to extraterrestrial technology and the ability to store information superior to all earthly counterparts. Over time, the Roswell disk has become a symbol of conspiracy theories and mysteries related to UFOs. Its existence is still disputed and is the subject of debate among scientists and researchers of the paranormal. The disk has become a legend in UFO circles, and many believe it is kept in secret government archives, along with other artifacts that point to extraterrestrial interference in the affairs of mankind. Stones from the Battle of Gettysburg. Like the caretaker of Pompeii, museum attendants at Gettysburg, USA, receive dozens of parcels a year containing twigs, stones, and other memorabilia stolen from the site of the famous Battle of the Negro Liberation War. Parcels are accompanied by letters in which would-be thieves complain about the misfortunes that have fallen on them. Injuries, illnesses, divorces. One souvenir lover lost his entire family, home, and went to prison for 9 years on false charges. Park rangers are now warning visitors. While you might want to take a little piece of history home, it's best to leave the relics where they are. The clearest photograph of a UFO. On September 4, 1971, in the northern highlands of Costa Rica, photographer Sergio Loaiza was conducting aerial photography of Lake Cote for the National Geographic Institute. Using a special mapping camera that takes photos at 13-second intervals, he did his job, unaware that one of the frames would be unique. Upon returning to the laboratory, Sergio checked the photographs and noticed in one of them a mysterious round metal object located on the right side of the photograph. It is noteworthy that an object resembling a flying saucer was not detected in either the previous or subsequent frames. For some time, the National Geographic Institute tried to hide the discovery, prohibiting Sergio and his colleagues from talking about the incident. A metallic flying object with a diameter of more than 18 meters was a closely guarded secret. But in 1979, a photograph appeared in an Argentine newspaper and was analyzed by experts. Soon, Costa Rica declared the photo as official confirmation of the existence of a UFO. Despite many years of study and debate among researchers in this area, no one has been able to say what kind of object this is. Skeptics suggested that the object on the right side of the photo was some kind of debris or stain that got onto the film while working with photographs. In 2021, a family friend was able to obtain the original photo in order to scan it using modern technology. This made it possible to digitize the image, making it clearer and more detailed. This allowed skeptics to see the saucer-shaped object at a higher resolution. The updated image allowed us to discard a number of banal assumptions and theories, since this was not a stain or chip on the camera glass. So what was it? Share your guesses in the comments. Elongated skulls. The mystery of the elongated skulls of Paracas continues to stir heated debate among scientists and researchers. These elongated skulls, discovered by archaeologist Julio Tello in 1928 on the Paracas Peninsula in Peru, date back approximately 3,000 years. The skulls are unusually shaped, and although similar finds have been found all over the world, from Rome to the Caucasus, the Paracas skulls are particularly surprising. It is believed that the elongated shape of the skulls was the result of deliberate manipulation, such as tying special bands or boards around the heads of infants. This process, known as cranial deformation, was common among many ancient cultures. Even today, it is practiced by some African tribes. However, it remains a mystery what exactly motivated people everywhere to engage in this practice. One popular hypothesis is that people sought to imitate the gods or guests from heaven who, according to legend, had elongated heads. Another version says that such a shape of the skull could enhance the perception of cosmic energy, which allegedly contributed to spiritual or intellectual development. The peculiarity of the Paracas skulls lies not only in their shape, but also in their volume and structure. Research shows that the volume of the skull is larger than that of ordinary people, and the structure of the bones is different. These anomalies give rise to theories about the extraterrestrial origin of the owners of such skulls. The skulls may belong to representatives of another race or hybrid creatures about which we know little yet. Heading for the moon. The longer 3I/ATLAS was observed, the stronger the feeling became that its trajectory was heading too confidently toward the moon. Skeptics attributed this to simple geometry. Most interstellar objects cross the plane of the ecliptic, but later calculations revealed a far more disturbing detail. The object wasn't simply passing by, it was slowing down. And it was doing so precisely where a typical comet would accelerate under the influence of gravity. At that moment, the old debate about how natural the moon itself was resurfaced. Over the decades, too many oddities had accumulated. Its perfectly round shape, its synchronous rotation without the slightest glitch, the incredible density of its crust, and those seismic signals that make the lunar surface ring like a metallic shell. These anomalies are usually mentioned separately without any attempt to integrate them into a larger picture. But when an interstellar object begins to behave as if it chooses the moon as its final destination, all these details cease to seem random. Scientists cautiously stated, 3I/ATLAS is showing signs of controlled deceleration. Ufologists put it more simply, it's heading where something already exists. And old theories about the moon being an ancient mechanism or even an artificial body suddenly cease to sound like science fiction. If everything we observe is truly not random, then the logic is simple. The ship is flying to a specific point. A mystery in the Amazon jungle. Padre Carlos Crespi Croce, an Italian missionary who spent most of his life serving in Ecuador, became one of the most enigmatic figures of the 20th century thanks to his extraordinary collection of artifacts. Working with the Shuar tribes in the Ecuadorian jungle, he acquired many ancient objects that some researchers believed could be evidence of an ancient, highly advanced civilization, and perhaps even contact with extraterrestrial intelligence. Crespi's collection included strange metal plates engraved with symbols reminiscent of ancient writing, including figurines depicting creatures with unusual features and objects that many described as technologically sophisticated. Of particular intrigue were metal reliefs depicting creatures with elongated skulls, stars, and scenes reminiscent of space travel. Interestingly, there were no known civilizations in the region that could produce such complex items. Rumors about the collection spread after some visitors, including researchers, claimed to see evidence of extraterrestrial influence in it. Some of the artifacts were said to be made of metals that could not be identified. Crespi, however, was not looking for fame. He claimed to accept these items from local tribes in exchange for aid and food. The collection's connection to extraterrestrial civilizations becomes even more interesting when considering the mystery of the tunnels beneath Ecuador that are the subject of legend. The tunnels, known as the Teos system, are said to contain a library of metal books. Some theorists suggest that these tunnels were a base for an ancient race, possibly of extraterrestrial origin. The Crespi collection could have been part of these treasures. Unfortunately, after the death of Padre Crespi in 1982, the collection was destroyed by fire or stolen, and its fate remains unclear. What do you think? Could a missionary become the custodian of traces of an ancient space civilization hidden in the Amazon jungle? A leather book. In Egypt, restorers are working with one of the oldest Quranic manuscripts. It's over 1,200 years old and weighs nearly 80 kilograms. It's not a scroll or an ordinary book, it's a gigantic volume of 1,087 leaves, each made of tanned animal skin. The ink has darkened, making the text barely legible, but the letters are handcrafted with astonishing precision. Each symbol resembles a pattern. Scholars believe this manuscript dates back to the 8th century and was likely created in one of the early Islamic centers, Kufa or Basra. The restorer's work has been going on for years. Each page is cleaned, strengthened, and fixed under a microscope. Experts note that despite its age, the parchment structure is virtually intact. This is one of the rare cases where an artifact has been preserved not by climate, but by its sheer size. The sheer weight and density of the pages have literally preserved the text from within. For Muslims, this book is not just a monument to faith, but a part of the history of writing. It shows the transition from Old Arabic script to a more familiar style, as well as how religion transformed text into art. The four-eyed figurine. This mysterious figurine, known as the four-eyed, was found in what is now Serbia. The age of the artifact is estimated at over 7,000 years, making it one of the oldest finds associated with the pre-literate culture of the Balkans. The figurine depicts a humanoid with four eyes, or perhaps elements resembling a mask. There is a hypothesis that these four eyes are actually part of a mask or headdress, and the figurine itself could depict not a real creature, but a mythical or divine creature revered in the society of that time. There is even a bold suggestion that it could be something resembling a spacesuit, hinting at contact with something extraterrestrial. Although this, of course, remains in the realm of fantasy. Little is known about the purpose of the figurine. Perhaps it was used in rituals or was a symbol of a protector or patron. This artifact leaves more questions than answers and continues to stir debate among archaeologists and mystery lovers. The four-eyed one is one of those rare artifacts that not only reveals fragments of the past to us, but also excites our imagination. Ice, 1.2 million years old. In the laboratory of the Alfred Wegener Institute, Bremerhaven, Germany, scientists are cutting up the oldest ice core on Earth, a cylinder 10 centimeters in diameter and 2.8 kilometers long, raised from a height of 3,200 meters at the Concordia Station, Antarctica. Radioisotope dating indicates an age of more than 1.2 million years. This is twice as old as the previous record holder Epica, 800,000 years. The atmosphere of the past is preserved in air bubbles. Glaciologists want to understand why the rhythm of glaciers changed a million years ago. Instead of cycles every 41,000 years, the Earth switched to a periodicity of about 100,000 years. Comparison of concentrations of CO2, methane, and dust will provide direct data on the relationship between greenhouse gases and temperature. And here's an unexpected bonus. At the basal mark, the drill broke through a thin layer of ice and pulled out a chunk of granite, likely the upper edge of the Antarctic basement. Geologists will have a chance to date when the continent was covered in ice. The first results will be available in a year. This core will give scientists a long line of history and make climate models more accurate when it comes to CO2 growth. Dragon houses and Mount Ohai. The dragon houses on the island of Euboea in Greece are mysterious megalithic structures that amaze with their massiveness and precision. These ancient structures, built from huge stone blocks without the use of binding mortar, date back to around the 8th century BC. Legends associate dragon houses with the gods, particularly Zeus, and describe them as places of sacred rituals and the habitat of ancient dragons who guard these territories. Mount Ohai, where some of the dragon houses are located, is considered a place of contact with the gods due to its remoteness and majestic location. In ancient Greek mythology, mountains were often associated with the abodes of the gods and places of their manifestations. This mountain, towering above the surrounding landscape, could be perceived as a sacred place where divine meetings and rituals took place. Archaeologists face many difficulties when studying these megalithic structures. One of the main mysteries is how the ancient builders were able to transport and lay such huge stone blocks on the tops of the mountains. The logistics and technical aspects of their construction remain unclear, especially given the lack of modern tools and equipment. There is also no exact data on the time and purpose of the construction of these structures, which complicates their study and interpretation. According to legend, Zeus used these places for his meetings with people and other gods. The dragons mentioned in legends could be symbols of his strength and protection of sacred places. There is a theory that the dragon houses could be places of contact with aliens. Proponents of this hypothesis argue that the unusual architecture and precise geometry of these buildings indicate the possible influence of extraterrestrial civilizations. They believe that the ancient Greeks may have interpreted encounters with aliens as contacts with the gods, which was reflected in their myths and legends. Colgante disc. An object called the Colgante disc at the Rafael Larco Herrero Archaeological Museum in Lima, Peru's capital, may be evidence that people in ancient times knew what the arms of the galaxy looked like. This artifact, believed to have been created some 2,000 years ago, looks like a spiral galaxy. But here's the catch. The number of arms on this disk does not match the number of arms in our galaxy. Assuming that the disk does indeed represent a galaxy, this calls into question many things we thought we knew about ancient civilizations. However, the Colgante disc remains a mysterious artifact that raises more questions than it answers. Mysterious accessory from the future. Archaeologists have discovered wall carvings depicting objects similar to modern handbags. Some of these images are about 12,000 years old. The earliest were found in Turkey in the ruins of the megalithic temple of Göbekli Tepe, where strange images are engraved on the columns of the ancient temple. Similar motifs have been discovered in Mexico, Iraq, and South America, raising many questions about the possible use of such objects by ancient civilizations. Although the images resemble handbags or clutches, experts believe the ancient ruins are more likely to depict baskets. Some believe that the concept of a handbag may have been invented by ancient civilizations. The first modern bag appeared in 1841 in England, created by Samuel Parkinson. The problem is that the Göbekli Tepe temple was built in 9000 BC, and its builders could hardly have known about such an accessory. Another ancient example of a handbag was found in ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs written about 5,000 years ago, where the gods hold a small square object symbolizing prosperity. Archaeologists have indeed found remains of baskets and tool bags used by the ancient Egyptians, but they cannot yet say for sure what is depicted in the hieroglyphs. Similar discoveries were made in Iraq, among the ruins of an Assyrian palace built between 883 and 859 BC, which depicts a genie with wings holding what appears to be a handbag. Historian David Miano believes that these figures, called Apkallu, were minor deities who carried water buckets made from sacred date palms rather than purses. Ancient buckets similar to the engravings were actually found in Iraq. Similar motifs have also been found in Mexico among Toltec ruins, where giant statues hold objects resembling handbags. These statues were created around 750 AD. Venus, the planet that breathes. If Mars is called our potential second home, then Venus is hell. Everything there is against life. Heat of 500 degrees, pressure like at a depth of a kilometer in the ocean, and clouds of sulfuric acid. But in 2020, the world was shocked by the news. Phosphine was discovered in the atmosphere of Venus. On Earth, it occurs in two cases, in the laboratory and as a byproduct of living organisms. Back in the 70s, Soviet probes transmitted mysterious pictures. They showed objects similar to stones that changed position. Scientists rushed to attribute everything to technical defects. But after the discovery of phosphine, many remembered these photos. And now the question sounds different. What if there is life on Venus? Not the one we are used to, but different. The one that has learned to survive in acid clouds and use poison like air. If life exists where it should not be, then our Earth is not a unique miracle at all. We are no exception. We are just one of the forms that accidentally survived on our planet. Rosetta Stone. One of the greatest archaeological finds that revealed to the world the key to deciphering ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs is the Rosetta Stone. It was discovered by officer Pierre-François Bouchard in July 1799 during Napoleon's campaign in Egypt. The stone immediately attracted attention due to its unique trilingual inscription. This granodiorite block contained a decree dating back to 196 BC during the reign of King Ptolemy V Epiphanes. The inscription was written in 3 languages: ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs at the top, Demotic script, a simplified script popular at the time, in the middle, and ancient Greek at the bottom. The uniqueness of the stone was that the Greek text was the key to deciphering the other 2. French scientist Jean-François Champollion completed the deciphering process in 1822, which was a revolutionary breakthrough in Egyptology. The Rosetta Stone provided insight into ancient Egyptian culture, religion, and history that had previously been hidden behind unreadable hieroglyphs. Although this is one of the most important discoveries in the history of archaeology, there are even more important archaeological discoveries to come. Holy Grail of the Nazis. In 2001, a Bavarian diver found a pot made of 10.5 kilograms of gold at the bottom of the local Lake Chiemsee, 70 kilometers east of Munich. The artifact had value in itself, but the researchers were confused by the coinage made in the style of Celtic counterparts 2,000 years ago. In particular, scientists were well aware of the so-called Gundestrup pot, discovered in 1891 in the Danish peat bogs, a superbly preserved silver vessel with rich Celtic decoration. It has been dated to the 1st millennium BC. However, after the examination, it was found that the pot from Chiemsee was made relatively recently, most likely in the 1930s. Further, it turned out that a certain Alfred Notz, a jeweler of the Munich company Theodor Hayden, told in the 1960s before his death that in the 1960s, early 1930s, he made a certain golden pot weighing about 10 kilograms by order of Albert Pitch, a major industrialist and director of the Elektrochemische Werke München. Pitch, a staunch Nazi and a supporter of Hitler, eventually received the high title of Wehrwirtschaftsführer, leader of the war economy, which was given to the heads of the most important enterprises of the Third Reich. Apparently, it was he who ordered the discovery in Lake Chiemsee. It is not clear how it ended up at the bottom of the reservoir, but it is known that on the shores of the lake it was planned to build a monumental complex of the higher school of the NSDAP, Hochschule der NSDAP, the main and most elite Nazi university, which was to become the leading educational and scientific center of the entire Third Reich. It is possible that the pot, made in the image and likeness of the ancient Celtic vessels, could be intended for this organization. The Nazis knew a lot about this kind of artifacts with a semi-esoteric function. The government is secretly in contact with aliens. Recently, UFO claims have surfaced, including from Mexico, where alien remains were allegedly found. It turned out that these were just dummies, but rumors about UFOs continue to spread online. Some believe in the control of the planet by unknown forces, while others perceive this as a distraction from real problems. Interest in UFOs was also fueled by former U.S. Navy Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet, who stated the connection between the American government and non-human intelligence. According to him, they are silent about this in order to hide top-secret technologies that can give an advantage in a military conflict. He calls for disclosure of information about contact with non-human intelligence. On the other hand, Elon Musk is skeptical about the idea of aliens existing in our part of the galaxy. He believes that in the next couple of hundred years, humanity will not be able to reach long distances in space, and that aliens are unlikely to be interested in a small planet on the outskirts of the galaxy. Musk is confident that human consciousness is a unique phenomenon and must be preserved. These statements by influential individuals fuel interest in the topic of UFOs, although they do not provide concrete facts. The surprising thing is that people in ancient times were interested in alien objects, and they saw UFOs and aliens in everything. As they say, there is no smoke without fire. Therefore, it is impossible to be 100% sure that there are no alien objects or creatures on our planet. What do you think? Write your opinion in the comments under the video. Could the US government have any contact with extraterrestrial life today? Rama's bow and rockets. Rama is the protagonist of the ancient epic Ramayana, who is always depicted with a bow and arrow. The legends say that he never missed, and his arrows could pass through several targets at the same time. For example, in this image, his arrow is going through 7 trees. Usually, ancient sculptors depicted people with primitive bows, but the bow of Rama and his troops always had unusual details. This is how archers are depicted on the walls of the Chichen temple. Archers march alongside regular foot soldiers in regular clothes, and their bows have wheels. The amazing thing is that modern bows use the same rollers that, according to Wikipedia, were invented about 50 years ago. But the walls of the temple make it clear that the ancients used this technology thousands of years ago. Of course, some expert will come and say that this is just decoration flowers, but why do soldiers need to decorate their weapons? Did Rama only need rollers on his bow to punch through 7 trees? Now let's look at their arrows. Everyone knows that the arrow should be thin and long, but the arrows that we see in these images are more like rockets. The arrowhead looks like there's something inside it and doesn't look like a simple pointed tip at all. Remember the Rambo movie? There's a guy on YouTube who proved that attaching explosives to an arrow is a piece of cake. The fact that these are rocket arrows and not just arrows is also said by the legends about Rama. They say that the area where the arrow hit was destroyed and his enemies exploded, leaving only soot behind. It is impossible to know for sure whether Rama and his soldiers had such advanced technology. However, we can judge the ancient people by carvings, and we can say with confidence that they were incredible builders, even surpassing modern ones. And based on this fact, we can conclude that the weapons of ancient people could be much more complicated than historians tell us. Unknown lunar material. When China brought back the first ever samples from the far side of the moon, they expected to find ordinary regolith, fused by meteorite impacts. But among the 5,000 fragments, 7 samples were discovered that defied scientists' expectations. They contained excessive amounts of olivine, a mineral characteristic of meteorites but not lunar rock. Chemical analysis revealed that these fragments did not match any known type of lunar mineral. Comparison of iron, manganese, nickel, and silicon isotopes yielded an unexpected result. The material was identical to CI chondrites, the most water-rich and rarest meteorites in the solar system. On Earth, such meteorites are almost never preserved. They are porous, brittle, and soft. They would not survive atmospheric entry. On the moon, it's a different story. Without air or braking, they arrive at full speed, melt, and instantly solidify, preserving their structure. These 7 fragments are the first confirmed case of CY chondrites being found on the moon in an unaltered state. And most importantly, there were more of them than expected. It is estimated that up to 1/3 of all meteorites that have ever fallen to the moon could be of this type. This is not just a rarity, it is the remnant of a massive bombardment that occurred when the Earth and Moon were just forming. But the most interesting thing is something else. CI chondrites are the leading candidate for the role of carriers of water and organic matter in the early solar system. And if there are so many of them on the moon, then part of that history was recorded there. Not on Earth, where tectonics in the atmosphere destroy everything, but on the far side of the satellite, which served as a kind of archive for billions of years. The irony is that while we are debating whether the moon is artificial or not, it is the very first to yield material that defies conventional models of the origin of water and, perhaps, life itself. 70,000-year-old bracelet. Scientists believe that this bracelet, 70,000 years old, was created by the Denisovans, an ancient species of hominids, close but different from Homo sapiens and Neanderthals. If this is confirmed, the date of creation of the bracelet will have to be pushed back 30,000 years. The bracelet was discovered in Siberia, and perhaps it will change our understanding of the development of ancient man. It is already forcing scientists to reconsider known levels of technology. For example, a bracelet has a hole made by drilling and sawing. Vigango. Gohu is an ancient community in Kenya. Local skilled craftsmen carve hardwood figures called vigango. They not only personify the honor of the dead tribesmen, but also embody the spirits of the dead. Vigangos are prized in the West as art and can be sold for a high price. However, stolen vigangos carry a curse, and not for thieves, but for the Gohu tribe itself. Vigango must constantly make sacrifices, and they must never disappear from the place where they are installed. Anthropologists have discovered that after several statues went missing, the tribe claimed that this fact was the cause of many years of drought and unexpected deaths of some members of the community. After several years of searching for the stolen vigango, some of them were returned to Kenya. Moreover, they were brought to Goha in iron cages as a guarantee that vigango would not be stolen again. Ancient paintings of UFOs. Recently, scientists often come across images of circles and triangles on the walls of ancient temples and caves. It may seem mundane, but the presence of flying objects in medieval religious paintings is surprising. I will show you 9 paintings that, according to ufologists, depict alien objects. The Annunciation with Saint Emetius, 1486, painting by Carlo Crivelli. The ray of light from heaven in the picture is traditionally interpreted as a divine broadcast, but some ufologists see a UFO in this image. The Crucifixion of Christ, 1350, painting from the Serbian monastery of Visoki Dekani. The picture shows 2 objects in the air that look similar to aircraft. The official version says that these are the moon and the sun, although in the Christian tradition, they are not deified. The Ascension of Christ, 1710, the work of Arent de Gelder, stored in Cambridge. It depicts a disc-shaped object illuminating John the Baptist and Jesus Christ. Some believe that the artist may have conveyed hidden knowledge about UFOs. Madonna with Saint Giovannino of 15th century, author Domenico Ghirlandaio. The painting shows a flying object above the Madonna's shoulder, which is pointed at by a man with a dog. Tapestry, Triumph of Summer, 1538, created in Bruges, kept in the Bavarian Museum in Germany. The tapestry depicts 3 disc-shaped objects which ufologists interpret as UFOs. The Miracle of Snow, 1428-1432, work by Masolino da Panicale. The painting depicts an event from 4th century Rome where disc-shaped objects are visible in the air. Israel, Trust in the Lord, 17th century, painting from the Dominican monastery in Sighisoara, Transylvania. It shows a giant disc-shaped object above a burning church. Glorification of the Sacrament of the Eucharist, 1600, author Bonaventura Salimbeni. The painting depicts Jesus Christ and God the Father with a globe, which some researchers interpret as a time control panel. The Crucifixion of Christ, 16th century, kept in the Svetitskovely Temple in Mitskata, Georgia. On the sides of the cross there are objects with human faces, which ufologists consider to be confirmation of the extraterrestrial origin of Jesus Christ. As you may have noticed, all these paintings were painted in completely different parts of the planet, but the objects are to some extent similar to each other. Why do stones move? Scattered across the dry lake bed of Racetrack Playa in Death Valley are heavy boulders leaving long furrows. The tracks extend for tens and hundreds of meters, sometimes turning sharply, sometimes running parallel to each other. The problem is that almost no one witnessed the movement. The stones seem to move on their own. Since the early 20th century, scientists have proposed a variety of explanations, from hurricane-force winds to magnetic anomalies. A solution emerged only in the 2010s when researchers installed GPS sensors on the stones and began long-term observations. One of the boulders, weighing over 300 kilograms, remained stationary for several years, then resurfaced 800 meters from its original location. It turned out that movement is only possible under rare circumstances. After rain, the bottom is covered with a thin layer of water, which freezes overnight. In the morning, the ice cracks into large sheets and begins to slide slowly across the mud, driven by the wind. These ice sheets, like sails, rest against the rocks and push them forward. The process is so slow that the human eye is almost unable to detect it. The rocks don't roll or bounce, they drift. So for decades, only traces remained with no obvious explanation. Islands that don't exist. The history of cartography is full of mysteries. Old sea charts from the 17th to 18th centuries show islands that don't exist today. Hundreds of sailors swore that they saw land, landed on the shore, even described plants and animals. But after decades, these islands disappeared. Modern satellites confirm that there is only empty ocean in the marked places. The most famous example is Sandy Island in the Coral Sea. It was put on maps for almost 200 years. In 2012, Australian researchers decided to double-check the point and found nothing. Not a piece of land, not a trace of a reef, just a depth of 1.5 kilometers. But how then to explain hundreds of records of captains? A mass hallucination or a mistake by all at once? There are dozens of such cases. The islands of Brabant, Frederick, Emerald, which existed for centuries and suddenly disappeared. Scientists attribute everything to measurement errors, but the sailors left detailed reports, with drawings, descriptions of flora and fauna. Either the entire world navigation has been wrong for centuries, or we are faced with a phenomenon for which we simply have no explanation. There are versions that these were not islands, but objects that could rise from the water and go back into the depths. Perhaps volcanic formations, perhaps something else. Some ufologists believe that these could be bases or ships of giants that were disguised as land. The clearest photograph of a UFO. On September 4, 1971, in the northern highlands of Costa Rica, photographer Sergio Loaiza was conducting aerial photography of Lake Cote for the National Geographic Institute. Using a special mapping camera that takes photos at 13-second intervals, he did his job unaware that one of the frames would be unique. Upon returning to the laboratory, Sergio checked the photographs and noticed in one of them a mysterious round metal object located on the right side of the photograph. It is noteworthy that an object resembling a flying saucer was not detected in either the previous or subsequent frames. For some time, the National Geographic Institute tried to hide the discovery, prohibiting Sergio and his colleagues from talking about the incident. A metallic flying object with a diameter of more than 18 meters was a closely guarded secret. But in 1979, a photograph appeared in an Argentine newspaper and was analyzed by experts. Soon, Costa Rica declared the photo as official confirmation of the existence of a UFO. Despite many years of study and debate among researchers in this area, no one has been able to say what kind of object this is. Skeptics suggested that the object on the right side of the photo was some kind of debris or stain that got onto the film while working with photographs. In 2021, a family friend was able to obtain the original photo in order to scan it using modern technology. This made it possible to digitize the image, making it clearer and more detailed. This allowed skeptics to see the saucer-shaped object at a higher resolution. The updated image allowed us to discard a number of banal assumptions and theories, since this was not a stain or chip on the camera glass. So what was it? Share your guesses in the comments. UFO on the cover of an 18th century book. The discovery of an image of a UFO on the cover of a book by Johann Funk, published in 1716, has caused widespread controversy among ufologists. This image, depicting a classic flying saucer surrounded by bright lightning, is seen by many as confirmation that alien visitors visited Earth as early as 300 years ago. Despite controversy over whether alien visits actually occurred in the 1700s, the find confirms that people of the time were also interested in the idea of extraterrestrial civilizations. As always, people are divided into types. Some believe in UFOs, others are skeptical about such assumptions. Ufologists wonder about the technological development of aliens. Assuming that they actually visited Earth in the 18th century, how did their technology remain unchanged for 3 centuries? This refers to the shape of an alien ship. Alien artifacts on Earth. History keeps finds that do not fit into any chronology. In Turkey, in the temple complex of Göbekli Tepe, there are columns with carved drawings of animals and abstract symbols. They are about 12,000 years old. Officially, at that time, people did not yet know either agriculture or architecture. But here we see an engineering concept and symbolism that has not been fully deciphered. Who built this complex, and why was it later buried as if they were trying to hide it? In South America, in Sacsayhuaman, giant stone blocks are fitted to each other so tightly that it is impossible to push even a blade between them. Stones weighing hundreds of tons are laid with perfect precision and with polygonal edges. Modern technology has difficulty repeating such joints. This means that 500 years ago, the Incas had something that they themselves called the technology of the gods. On the other side of the world, in Baalbek, Lebanon, lies a stone known as the Southern Megalith. It weighs over 1,000 tons. Until now, no one has explained how ancient builders could have moved it. But the fact remains, this block is processed, and it was clearly an attempt to use it in construction. The only question is by whose hands. Similar finds include the Ural metal spirals, the megalithic platforms of Tiwanaku, and perfectly drilled holes in the stones of Egypt, leaving the feeling of a high-precision machine at work. Every culture has artifacts that seem to have wandered from the wrong time. Scientists explain this by primitive technologies, coincidence, and a play of nature. But then why do such coincidences repeat themselves all over the planet, in different eras and among different peoples? The version that these are traces of strangers is convenient not because it is sensational, but because too much begins to fit into one picture. And if these are indeed artifacts left by someone else, then their purpose could be simple: to show that we are not the first, and that everything we build today is just a faint echo of what was already here thousands of years ago. Stone ram heads. Egyptian archaeologists are completing large-scale excavations on the Avenue of the Sphinxes, a 3,000-year-old road that connects the Karnak and Luxor temples. The 2,700-meter alley was built by Pharaoh Amenhotep III in the 12th century BCNS. Once it included more than 1,200 statues and was of great ritual significance. Over time, it was covered with sand, and many of the statues were damaged. Excavations in the area of the Karnak Temple have been going on since the 1940s with long breaks. In 2010, Egypt decided to tidy up the site and open it up to tourists. By 2020, the territory has been explored by 98%. By this time, many ancient artifacts were discovered here, including many of the lost ram-headed sphinxes. In ancient Egypt, the ram was a symbol of Amun-Ra, the patron saint of power, energy, and fertility. Installed next to the necropolises, the ram-headed sphinxes also acted as guards, silently calling for awe-inspiring silence. 3 more heads of rams were recently found. One of them is dedicated to King Amenhotep III. It has a horn, an eye, and a hole in which a cobra is placed. It is known that the crown of Amenhotep III had holes for a snake. The restorers will return the heads to their places so that they again turn into mythological sphinxes located on both sides of the alley. Scientists call this ancient road an open-air museum, and now work on its restoration has entered the final stage. Soon, presumably in November, the opening ceremony of this monument will take place.
Are these finds really 300 million years old? From time to time, miners find strange artifacts in coal seams that appear to have been created by intelligent beings. This poses some awkward questions for science, since the age of these rocks is estimated at 300 million years. How could objects that were clearly made by hand get there? After all, at that time, the Earth was inhabited only by giant insects and the first reptiles, and there was no talk of people, dinosaurs, or even advanced technologies. However, the finds continue to amaze us. In 1912, an iron pot was extracted from a coal seam in Oklahoma. And in 1851, a zinc and silver vase was discovered in Massachusetts, the rock of which is 534 million years old. A metal rod similar to a rack made of aluminum with an admixture of magnesium was found in Russia. Its origin is even more mysterious. Aluminum was discovered only in 1825, and the age of the coal in which it was found exceeds 300 million years. Scientists have found that the metal is saturated with carbon, which confirms its incredible age. But if so, who made it? Some believe that these finds are traces of a vanished civilization that existed long before us, but was wiped off the face of the planet by a global cataclysm. Others suggest that the objects could have been left by aliens or even time travelers. Skeptics, in turn, are sure that this is a hoax or dating error. There is also a theory that coal was formed not millions but only a few thousand years ago under the influence of deep gases and pressure. If so, then the artifacts may not be so ancient at all.
Ancient mask of a strange substance. More recently, the sensational news spread around the world that mysterious artifacts were discovered off the coast of Florida. Their antiquity was obvious, but their origin was unknown. In total, 7 items fell into the hands of scientists. All of them are created from a material that is practically not found on Earth, iridium. Of course, this item was created by the hands of people and in quite earthly conditions, The fact is that iridium is found in large quantities in fallen meteorites. Apparently, the ancient people noticed the sign from heaven and went after it. Having obtained the most precious stone, they began to create cult objects. Analysis of the artifacts showed that they are at least 12,000 years old. Considering that iridium is a very refractory and hard material, it is probably worth reconsidering the level of development of metallurgy among the ancient Incas. Presumably, these items belong to them. Personally, I have no doubt that the ancient civilizations possess transcendental knowledge in those areas that have not yet been conquered by modern humanity. Therefore, there is no doubt that the masters were able to create these masterpieces 12,000 years ago. Of greatest interest was the mask of the god Viracocha. Its thickness is only 1.7 millimeters. At the same time, there is a drawing of a great deity and various religious symbols on it. This artifact allows us to conclude that the culture of the late Incas is extremely scarce when compared with objects that are thousands of years old. The image of the god Viracocha allows you to accurately determine the origin of the product. It was created by the Incas 12,000 years ago. However, modern history indicates that the Inca Empire is one of the youngest civilizations. It turns out that historians deliberately hide the truth about the ancient Incas or know very little about their true culture. Does it remind you of anything? The Anglo-Saxons destroyed the great history of the Indians so that there was a feeling that America was built not on the death of Indian civilizations, but on the territories occupied by uneducated nomadic tribes. Slavic knowledge was subjected to a similar purge. History cannot be trusted. Thank God artifacts help to find out the forgotten truth. The world's greatest mystery. The underwater ruins of an ancient city estimated to be 10,000 years old have been discovered off the coast of the Japanese island of Yonaguni. This complex, reminiscent of a pyramid, a castle, temples, an arch, and a stadium, is connected by roads. In 2007, marine biologist Masaaki Kimura described the main structure as a monolithic step pyramid, 25 m high. He suggested that the structures were built by the Jomon people who lived on the islands 14,000 years ago. However, Professor Robert Schoch of Boston University expressed the opinion that the Yonaguni Monument is a natural geological formation. 37 years have passed since the first discovery of the Japanese Atlantis in 1986, but its origin is still shrouded in mystery. Kimura proposed the theory that it was part of the continent of Mu that was lost due to the disaster. He also found stone images, including an underwater sphinx. Seismologist Toru Uchi from Kobe University supported Kimura's hypothesis, rejecting the assumption that the structures had a natural origin. However, Professor Schoch remains unconvinced, arguing that the structure is not artificial and its characteristics are the result of natural processes. So, the depths of the sea near Yonaguni continue to hold the mystery of these amazing structures, remaining the subject of discussion and research by scientists.
Objects over Yorkshire. In Yorkshire, people began photographing strange dark ovals hovering low above the horizon. At first, everyone thought they were birds or drones until new images emerged, taken by different people on different days, but with the same shape and the same stillness. Experts examined the images. No wingspan, no propellers, no characteristic motion blur. The object hung in the air as if unaffected by gravity or wind. In one of the images, a subtle glow along the contour was visible, not bright, but steady, as if light emanating from within. Meteorologists ruled out atmospheric distortion, aviation ruled out their own devices, and astronomers ruled out satellites. And still, no explanation was found. For several weeks, the objects appeared almost on schedule, before sunset, on the same horizon, and then abruptly, they disappeared. If this had happened only once, it would have been chalked up to a camera artifact. But similar oval shadows with a glow have been reported in Canada, the United States, and Eastern Europe. Similar shapes, similar behavior, immobility, a smooth outline, disappearing without a trace. It's as if someone is watching us. And what's most frightening is that UFOs are becoming increasingly common these days.
Alien skulls. A few years ago, American and European media were filled with sensational stories about the discovery of alien skulls in a cave in Russia. These strange skulls, resembling something clearly non-human, caused a lot of controversy. Many assumed that they could belong to aliens or creatures unknown to science. However, journalists soon declared that the whole story was a hoax and it quickly disappeared from the headlines. These skulls could have been part of an ancient ritual or simply the altered remains of animals whose bones had acquired unusual shapes. But it is interesting to imagine what it must have felt like to discover them for the first time in a dark, cold cave. It is one thing to see them in a photograph, and quite another to hold this mysterious artifact in your hands, causing a feeling of both fear and curiosity. Even though this discovery turned out to be a hoax, it remains an interesting reminder of how myths and facts can intertwine to create amazing stories.
Asteroid influence and contact with the gods. The asteroid believed to have wiped out the dinosaurs some 66 million years ago has left a significant mark on the Yucatan Peninsula. This impact created the Chicxulub crater, which is still an important geological feature. Although this cataclysm occurred long before the emergence of the Mayan civilization, its long-term geological and environmental consequences may have influenced the formation of the region in which the culture later developed. Archaeological finds, such as cities and buildings destroyed and buried under a layer of sediment, may indirectly confirm the theory of cataclysms that occurred in Yucatan. However, there is no direct evidence that the Mayans knew about the asteroid that destroyed the dinosaurs or had any information about them. The idea that the Mayans may have had contact with dinosaurs is scientifically unfounded. Dinosaurs went extinct long before the first humans appeared, not to mention the Mayan civilization. However, in mythology and their art, one can find depictions of creatures that can be interpreted as legendary or mythical animals, but this is not evidence of their actual contact with dinosaurs. Researchers sometimes find dinosaur fossils in Mesoamerica, but these findings date back to a time before human history. Such finds may be of interest to geologists and paleontologists, but they do not support the theory of Mayan contact with dinosaurs. Knowledge of ancient cataclysms may have been integrated into their mythology and beliefs, linking natural phenomena to the actions of the gods. The Mayans believed in cyclical time and recurring catastrophes, which may have been a reflection of their understanding of the past and prediction of future events. Discovery of the oldest nuclear reactor in the world. It's funny, but the first human reactor that produces electricity was created only in 1951. But a stone block in Oklo in Gabon already created nuclear energy 2 billion years ago. The history of the discovery began in 1972 when French scientists took a sample of uranium ore from a deposit in Gabon to test its uranium composition. And here scientists have come across a surprising discovery. The uranium sample contained less uranium-235 than usual. This meant that about 200 kilograms of uranium-235 disappeared somewhere in the mine. As it turned out, the missing uranium went through the process of nuclear fission and split into other atoms. It turns out that nature accidentally created a nuclear reactor operating under very specific conditions necessary for the continuous release of energy. And it really happened. First, there was enough uranium-235 in the ore to keep the reaction going. Second, uranium-235 naturally decays, releasing a neutron that initiates the fission process. And finally, there was enough underground water at the site of the reactor which slowed down the neutrons and regulated the reaction. Has the first battle with aliens already happened? On August 26, 1946, an American scientific expedition set out for the South Pole. It was led by naval officer and explorer Admiral Richard Byrd, who took part in the First World War. The expedition involved 13 ships, 33 aircraft, and almost 5,000 U.S. Navy soldiers. The group under the command of the admiral returned only 9 months later, reporting that it had to engage in battle with the remnants of the Third Reich and possibly aliens. Flying objects attacked the expedition members and caused significant damage to the American group. Byrd in his report claimed to have seen unidentified devices capable of moving at incredible speeds, changing their location almost instantly. At that time, the admiral's statements, despite his high status, seemed like fiction. However, in 2018, a satellite image revealed a contrail left by something moving at incredible speeds. The trail stretched across the entire Earth, connecting the South and North Poles, which is about 20,000 kilometers. The maximum duration of preservation of the trace and its shape is 30 minutes, while most of it begins to dissipate after 15 minutes. Based on the data obtained, we can say that the object that left the contrail was moving at a speed of at least 80,000 kilometers per hour, which is 10 times higher than the speed of the fastest aircraft existing at the moment.
Space owl. Something is looking right at us in the depths of space. Two glowing eyes on a black background. And it's not an illusion. The James Webb has captured a collision of two ring galaxies, so rare that the chances of seeing it are less than winning all the lotteries at once. The mass is 320 billion suns. In the center are two black holes devouring matter and flashes of the birth of new worlds. Scientists say it's just a merger, but why do we see the image again? Why does the universe put together eyes, symbols, signs? Maybe it's a coincidence, or maybe it's a message. And the question is, who left it? Are aliens sending signals from space? With the development of modern technologies, humanity began to study not only the surrounding space, but also outermost space. Technological progress does not stand still, and new inventions make it possible to obtain more and more information about how this world works. Scientists have repeatedly received signals from space that are of a strange nature. Some of them took decades to study, which is intriguing and suggests that aliens living somewhere far away are trying to contact us. The strangest and most mysterious signal received from space was a radio signal emanating directly from the center of the Milky Way galaxy. In 2020, astronomers around the world were stumped when an Australian radio telescope identified more than 2 million objects sending signals to Earth. The computer qualified all radio signals except one. An unknown object lurking at the center of our galaxy was emitting powerful radio waves, sending out 6 signals in 9 months. The irregular structure and polarized radio emission were unlike any previous signal. Equally strange is that the object cannot be seen with X-ray or infrared light. 2 powerful radio telescopes observed it all this time, but the object mysteriously disappeared. It would seem that this is where the story ends, but a year later the strange radio signal was repeated and disappeared again a day later. This atypical behavior suggests that this is not a dead star or other space object known to mankind. Stumped, scientists classified the rare signal into a category called radio transients from the galactic center. At the moment, the category includes only 3 objects, the search for which took more than 10 years. The new square-kilometer array telescope, which should be commissioned in 2028, will help solve the mystery and possibly recognize the alien signal.
Cave paintings of Valcamonica. In the Valcamonica Valley, located in northern Italy, there are over 200,000 cave paintings created by various cultures over the past 8,000 years. These engravings provide unique evidence of ancient civilizations, depicting their rituals, social structure, and daily life. However, among the many traditional images of animals, dancing people, and symbols, there are several engravings that are of particular interest to researchers. Some of them look like figures dressed in strange costumes, reminiscent of spacesuits with details similar to helmets, antennas, and other devices. These drawings have given rise to much speculation. Some argue that they may have been created after contact between the ancient inhabitants of Valcamonica and alien civilizations. Such theories often rely on the appearance of these figures, arguing that ancient people may have depicted extraterrestrial beings or even astronauts they encountered. However, most scholars are inclined to believe that these engravings may represent ritual or symbolic images, perhaps associated with religious beliefs or rituals of the time. Here, scientists always have one opinion. If a find cannot be explained, it means it is connected either with something extraterrestrial or with an ancient ritual. Stone berries. In the desert of the southwestern United States, strange rounded stones were found, like stone berries scattered on the sand. At first, they were mistaken for weathered rock fragments, until it was discovered that similar structures are found in Hopi legends about heavenly seeds and that similar formations exist on Mars. Their shape is perfectly spherical or slightly elongated, with a smooth, polished surface. Geologists call them concretions, but typically such stones form in layers pressed together by rocks. Here they lay loose as if someone had emptied them from a bag. The strangest thing is their chemical composition. Inside, there are iron layers that are very reminiscent of the Martian blueberries, spheres discovered by exactly the same teams on Mars by the Opportunity rover. The composition of the elements is almost identical. The Hopi call these berries the traces of visiting teachers from the Red Star. Scientific theories are simpler, a rare form of mineralization, prolonged wind erosion, but then it's unclear why the structures are identical in different countries, and why some of the berries seem to have been scorched by high temperatures never experienced in these areas.
This is a conundrum for archaeologists. Is it an artifact, a mineral, or a trace of events we can't yet describe? But the fact remains. Such forms are repeated on both Earth and Mars, and sometimes nature replicates itself too precisely in places where the conditions for it would seem impossible. Village 70 million years old. This story is rather dark, strange, and mysterious. Was an underground settlement 70 million years old really found in Belgium? And who lived in it? Let's start in order. A very religious artist, Robert Garce, 1912 by 2001, fascinated by the Bible and ancient civilizations, decided to build a fairy castle with biblical characters in the village of Aben Emael in the province of Henegouwen, Belgium. It took Robert 15 years to build what he had conceived, and today the castle serves as a museum dedicated to the art of Garce and his archaeological finds. Garce Castle has 7 levels, 5 levels above the ground and 2 levels below the ground. The structure itself is 12 meters, 40 feet square on each side, supported by 4 towers at each corner. Garce deliberately designed the castle to match ancient measurement systems. Each dimension in the tower is symbolic. The constructed masterpiece Ebenezer is the personification of humanity described in the Book of Revelations. 4 giant statues of biblical creatures are erected on the tops of the towers: an eagle, a bull, a lion, and a man. The interior of the castle is filled with biblical, archaeological, paleontological, and geological works by Garce. So during construction, while digging a pit under the foundation, Garce's builders discovered a whole network of tunnels, more than 100 fossils, and what is most incredible, underground, not far from the construction site, cave structures similar to a village in a layer 70 million years old. In general, there are a lot of underground tunnels in Belgium, and some of them are so long that they have not yet been fully explored. Well-preserved remains of a mosasaur skull were also found there. When Garce explored the nearby underground flint mines and tunnels, he found many stone toys and figurines. Some look like stone dolls made of rounded flat stones with engraving. They all look very primitive and unlike what ordinary archaeologists are used to. Garce scanned the underground village and discovered straight walls, tables, benches, and decorative ornaments carved into the walls. It looked like an ordinary village with streets, only this one was underground. Above the village are 3 layers of oceanic sediments, which indicates that Belgium was covered by the ocean 3 times. The layer where the underground village is located is 70 million years old. Of course, this is a controversial archaeological discovery because the cave village could have been excavated much later. It might be interesting for scientists these days to explore an ancient underground village in Belgium, but it's too late. By a strange coincidence, the village was destroyed by an explosion in a mine before it could be explored. Why was this opening closed? Why didn't anyone want to explore this place? And why were these cave structures clearly deliberately destroyed? A version suggests itself that this place was known to archaeologists, but apparently the finds did not fit into the modern, officially accepted interpretation of ancient history. And when the village was accidentally discovered, it was simply destroyed. Alien skulls. It all started when the locals were digging canals for irrigation and accidentally stumbled upon these amazing finds. At the site, which was named El Cementerio, the remains of 25 people were found. 17 of them were children from 5 months to 16 years old, and the remaining 30 skulls are so deformed that they simply amaze the imagination. As archaeologist Cristina Garcia Morena explains, this form of skulls is a consequence of an ancient tradition when children's heads were tied together with wooden planks. This was done in order to highlight their social group or status, but the exact reason for this unusual custom is still a mystery. Changes in human DNA. Some scientists are discussing the possibility that alien microbes could interfere with human DNA, causing significant changes to our genetic code. This hypothesis suggests that such microorganisms may not only exist, but also influence human evolution, making us more like them. In support of this idea, researchers point to a number of observed changes in the human population, such as decreased testosterone levels and decreased sperm counts in men. These trends can be interpreted as signs of evolutionary changes, possibly caused by external influences, including environmental factors, or even the influence of extraterrestrial agents. Decreased testosterone levels and sperm count can have serious consequences for reproductive health and population demographics, making this topic important from both a scientific and social perspective. Alien ecosystem. On the remote Puna de Atacama Plateau in the Atacama Desert, located at an altitude of over 3,650 meters on the border of Argentina and Chile, archaeologists have found a unique ecosystem with crystal-clear lagoons surrounded by salt flats. It rarely rains in this region and the sun creates extreme conditions. Last April, geologist Brian Hynek and microbiologist Maria Farias discovered these lagoons while studying satellite images and went there. Despite the difficulty of the journey, the researchers discovered 12 lagoons with a total area of 10 hectares surrounded by barren mountains. Beneath the water were green mounds called stromatolites, microbial communities that form massive fossils. These formations resemble stromatolites from the Archean era of the Earth, when there was almost no oxygen in the atmosphere. Hynek believes this lagoon may be one of the best examples of early signs of life on Earth. In the Atacama lagoons, formations are composed primarily of gypsum, a mineral often found in fossil stromatolites. Hynek noted that conditions in the lagoon are reminiscent of ancient Earth. Lithium will be mined in this area, so the unique ecosystem will most likely be destroyed. Dark matter, dark life. We don't see 90% of the universe. Everything we know, stars, planets, galaxies, is just a small part. Scientists call the rest dark matter and dark energy. We know that it exists. Its gravity keeps galaxies from collapsing. Its influence can be felt in space, but we don't know what it's made of. The most disturbing thing about this story is that dark matter is invisible to our instruments. It passes through us, through the Earth, through every atom, and we don't feel anything. But what if it can form structures? What if there are worlds inside this invisible framework that we simply don't notice? Some physicists admit that dark matter can interact with itself, forming complex systems. This means that there could be something like dark biology there, life that exists in another phase of reality. It's not made of carbon, not of silicon, but of something that has no shape at all for us. Then our familiar world is just a thin layer on the surface of a deeper universe. And it is possible that right now we are surrounded by this invisible life. It moves nearby, passes through walls and cities, looks at us, and we are not even able to understand what exactly surrounds us. And the question in this case sounds harsher than usual. What is scarier? To meet aliens on another planet, or to find out that they have been living nearby all the time, just in another layer of our reality? Martian coral. On July 24, 2025, the Curiosity rover sent a picture that initially made scientists freeze. On the rock was a shape that was all too familiar to us from Earth. It looked like coral. A real fossilized coral is evidence that Mars could once have had an ocean full of life. NASA was quick to explain, no biology, just minerals that took on a bizarre shape due to water and wind erosion. A rock, not an organism. Our brain itself draws familiar images where there are none. The official version sounds logical. Too logical. But how many times have we heard the same thing? A rock accidentally looks like a statue. A shadow accidentally looks like a tower. A shape accidentally repeats the pattern of a living creature. At what point does the number of these coincidences become proof? Maybe this really is a trick of nature. Or maybe we're just not ready to hear the main thing. Mars was alive, and that's why we're so drawn there, because deep down, we're returning home. Dangers and mystical deaths. People reporting UFO encounters face several dangers. One of the main threats is social stigma. Witnesses are often ridiculed and not taken seriously, which can negatively impact their personal and professional lives. In addition, there are more serious risks, including psychological pressure, threats, and even physical danger, especially if their evidence involves secret government programs or military installations. There are several examples of mysterious deaths of UFO researchers. For example, James McDonald, a renowned scientist and UFO researcher, allegedly committed suicide in 1971 after a series of mysterious events and threats. Morris Jessup, author of The Case for UFOs, also died under suspicious circumstances in 1959, raising suspicions of possible outside interference.
There are programs to protect witnesses and UFO researchers. Some organizations provide legal support and security advice. There are many theories about the connection between the deaths of UFO researchers and their work. Some suggest that governments or secret organizations eliminate people who have dangerous knowledge or reveal classified information. Others believe that these deaths may be the result of psychological pressure and stress associated with the study and disclosure of such data.
Two-headed alien. A strange mummy with two heads was discovered in Tibet, which was immediately dubbed the two-headed alien. This artifact shocked scientists and fans of mysticism. The mummy looks as if its origins go beyond the earthly, which gives rise to many theories, from mutations to extraterrestrial civilizations. Some researchers believe that this could be a ritual artifact or a cult image created by ancient people to worship unknown forces. Interestingly, the structure of the mummy looks unusual even for mutations known to biology. The proportions of its body and the shape of its head suggest that it could be the embodiment of something mythical or unearthly. Ancient Tibetan legends often mention heavenly beings who visited Earth. Perhaps this artifact is an attempt to depict those whom the ancients considered gods. However, there is also a more mundane version. The mummy may be the result of artificial mummification of two different bodies connected for ritual purposes.
The mystery of Archaeim. Archaeim, often called the Russian Stonehenge, is one of the most mysterious archaeological sites in Russia. Located in the steppes of the southern Urals, this megalithic complex is striking in its size and precision of planning, which makes it similar to the famous Stonehenge in Great Britain, both in astronomical functions and in geographical latitude. Archaeim is a round fortress with two concentric rings of walls and streets connecting dwellings, which were built taking into account the astronomical knowledge of the ancients. Research has shown that the buildings in Archaeim were built in such a way as to observe 18 astronomical events, including solstices and equinoxes. This indicates a high level of astronomical knowledge of the peoples who inhabited this region in the Bronze Age. Archaeim not only attracts archaeologists, but is also a subject of interest for researchers of anomalous phenomena. Unusual magnetic anomalies are recorded in the area of the complex, which sometimes affect the operation of electronic devices. These anomalies, as well as a number of other unexplained phenomena, give rise to various theories, including suggestions that Archaeim could have been used or even created by extraterrestrial civilizations. In addition, the unique architecture and complex water supply system testify to the high level of social organization and engineering skill of its builders. These qualities make Archaeim one of the key Bronze Age monuments in Eurasia. Sabu's Disc. This is one of the most mysterious artifacts of ancient Egypt found in the tomb of Sabu, a descendant of Pharaoh Ajib. It is at least 5,000 years old, but its true purpose remains a mystery. At first glance, it is a stone disc with 3 curved petals, but the details make one wonder. The thickness in some places reaches only 1.5 millimeters, which indicates incredible precision of manufacture. Given the level of technology of that time, many wonder, how was this possible? Scientists hypothesize that the disc could have been part of a ritual or a decorative element, but there are other theories that go beyond the usual. Some researchers believe that the Sabu disc could have been a copy of a device left by guests from the sky, a highly developed civilization that visited Earth in ancient times. The structure and shape of the artifact resemble modern aerodynamic devices or even elements of complex mechanisms. The Egyptians may have considered this object sacred and tried to reproduce something they saw but did not understand. Some believe that the Sabu disc is the key to unraveling the interaction of ancient civilizations with extraterrestrial intelligence. For now, these are just guesses, but the mystical aura surrounding this artifact continues to excite minds and invites us to delve into the secrets of the past.
Chichen Itza and its mysteries. Chichen Itza was of great importance to the Mayan civilization as a political, economic, and religious center. This ancient city, located on the northern Yucatan Peninsula, was an important site for rituals and ceremonies related to the gods and astronomical phenomena. Erich von Daniken, known for his theories about ancient aliens, paid attention to the El Castillo Pyramid. Temple of Kukulkan. In his research, he suggested that the accuracy of the pyramid's architectural and astronomical elements may indicate Mayan contact with extraterrestrial civilizations. Daniken noted that pyramids like El Castillo could have been built using technologies unknown to modern scientists. The symbolic meaning of the light shown in the steps of the El Castillo pyramid during the equinoxes is associated with the cultic veneration of the god Kukulkan. During the spring and autumn equinoxes, sunlight creates the illusion of a serpent descending the steps of the pyramid. This phenomenon was interpreted as the return of Kukulkan to Earth, confirming the importance of the Mayas' astronomical knowledge and their ability to design architecture in harmony with the movements of celestial bodies. The Mayans believed in the return of the god Kukulkan, a feathered serpent who symbolized rebirth and renewal. This belief was based on ancient myths and texts such as the Popol Vuh and the Mayan codes, which describe the cyclical nature of time and the return of the gods at certain points in history. Kukulkan was an important deity associated with wind, water, and fertility, making his cult especially significant to the agrarian Mayan society. Modern archaeologists interpret these finds as evidence of the high level of development of astronomy and engineering among the Mayans. They believe that the pyramids and other structures of Chichen Itza were built taking into account complex mathematical calculations and observations of the movement of celestial bodies. Desert water tunnels. There are places in Iran where the earth looks as if it's been gouged out by a giant drill. Smooth, round holes stretch for kilometers. These are actually khares, underground aqueducts that are nearly 3,000 years old. Khareses were built like this. An aquifer was found, a main well was drilled, and a tunnel was dug from it at an angle. Every few dozen meters, vertical shafts were dug, the very same holes visible from the surface. They served as ventilation, drainage, and entry points for workers. The main advantage of this system was that water flowed underground and almost never evaporated. In the arid climate of Persia, this was a matter of survival. The khares allowed for the irrigation of fields, the supply of water to cities, and the maintenance of life in places where it otherwise would not have existed. The Gonabad Khares is one of the oldest and longest. It stretches 33 kilometers with 427 shafts. Many of them were dug by hand in stone without metal tools. And what's amazing is that the system still works. For archaeologists, this isn't just engineering. It's the memory of a civilization that understood the laws of geology and physics as well as modern specialists. The people here learned to harness water in ways that have endured for millennia. Traces of fire under megaliths. Under many ancient megalithic structures, archaeologists find charred layers, but these are not the remains of fires. The temperature was too high to be created by ordinary people. The stones are melted in places, as if they were exposed to plasma or a powerful energy source. In Pumapunku and Tiwanaku in Bolivia, traces are visible on basalt slabs, as if they were cut with a hot tool. In Egypt, melted edges of blocks are recorded where there should be neither fire nor volcanism. Scientists explain this by random natural processes, but the temperature clearly exceeded the level of any natural fire. Too many coincidences. As if in ancient times energy comparable to modern plasma cutting or even more powerful was used. Then megaliths cease to be tombs or ritual buildings. They become traces of work with technologies that people simply did not have. The Codex that saw the future. A 12th century Mayan scroll, long considered a collection of incomprehensible symbols, is housed in a Dresden museum, until scientists realized it was a highly accurate ancient algorithm for predicting solar eclipses. The Maya took a cycle of 405 lunar months and noted 38 new moons during which the sun could disappear. But their genius lay elsewhere. They regularly reset the calendar by 223 or 358 months, preventing the error from accumulating. Thus, the table remained accurate for centuries. Modern astrophysicists have verified the model. They compared the codex with 145 actual eclipses observed by the Maya. Everything matched. Moreover, this method can be used today simply by continuing their calculations. For the Maya, an eclipse was a sign from the gods, but the calculations themselves are pure mathematics, constructed without telescopes or instruments, only observations and memory. And now it is becoming clear. The Dresden Codex is not an ancient relic, but proof that man is capable of understanding the rhythms of the universe even without technology. Silicon creatures. We are all used to thinking that life is built on carbon. Carbon is the foundation for DNA molecules, proteins, and all living things on Earth. But what if this is just one of the possibilities? Scientists have long been discussing the idea of silicon life. Silicon is also an element capable of forming strong chains and complex structures. Only these structures will be different, more rigid, crystalline, perhaps even not like organic matter. There is a hypothesis that in conditions of high temperatures and pressure where carbon life is destroyed, silicon life, on the contrary, can flourish. Imagine a world where living creatures are translucent formations similar to stones that grow, feed on minerals, and transmit information through vibrations. We would take such an organism for an ordinary stone and would not even guess that it is alive. What is especially alarming is that probe data sometimes shows anomalies that are difficult to fit into carbon models. Scientists do not speak seriously about living crystals, but such versions slip through in closed reports. And if silicon life exists, then this means one thing. We can walk among it for millions of years without noticing that these stones are not stones at all.
2,000-year-old fig. Irish archaeologists have made a surprising discovery when they found the charred remains of a 2,000-year-old fig tree on Drumnach Point north of Dublin. The find is important evidence that the Roman Empire, which once considered Ireland untouchable, did have an impact on its culture. Drumnach Point was a key point of contact between Ireland and Roman-ruled England. The fig was the most surprising of the finds made by researchers from University College Dublin. The seeds of the fruit confirm that it was brought to the island at a time when such exotic fruits were considered rare. Figs had previously only been found in medieval strata in Ireland, but this is the oldest known. As well as the figs, traces of spelt were found, a grain widely consumed in Roman Britain but rare in Ireland. The finds show that the Romans not only traded goods but also transferred lifestyles. Archaeologist Christine Baker said that the people of Ireland at the time enjoyed spelt bread, olive oil, wine in used glass, and ceramic dishes, brooches, and beads. Figs, first grown in eastern Turkey and northern India, were carried by ancient trade routes to the Mediterranean, where they became an important part of the Roman diet. Researchers believe that figs and spelt may have been brought through Roman Chester, a major trading post in Britain.
Hongshan artifacts. The Hongshan civilization is one of the most mysterious cultures of ancient China, which existed about 6,000–7,000 years ago. It left behind unusual jade artifacts that depict humanoids with teardrop-shaped heads and huge eyes. Some of the figurines resemble creatures riding water scooters or even flying machines. These images do not fit into the usual ideas about ancient cultures and make you wonder who or what were the Hongshan masters trying to capture. The unique Huangshan caves discovered in 1999 also belong to this culture. These man-made caves amaze with their size and complexity. Inside, you can see pools, bridges over rivers, stairs, and passages. The area of the largest cave is 12,600 square meters. But the real mystery is the traces left on the walls. They resemble modern tunneling machines, although technology of this level is not believed to have existed thousands of years ago. In addition, it remains unclear where the gigantic volumes of excavated rock disappeared to. Scientists have not yet found traces of its movement. Some researchers suggest that the caves and jade artifacts are evidence of contact with a more advanced civilization, possibly of extraterrestrial origin. Ancient Maya artifacts. Archaeologists from Mexico recently went to the mysterious Chimul Cave. This is a dark, mysterious place where the secrets of the ancient Mayan civilization were hidden for centuries. According to legend, this cave was the entrance to the underworld where, according to the Maya, deities lived. So they often used the caves for their sacred ceremonies. Among the finds are two ancient vessels that were carefully placed in the niches of the cave. They were probably used to collect water flowing from stalactites. Such water was considered sacred. Another object, a bowl on a tripod, was found upside down and placed under stones. This indicates that it could be part of a ritual, a sacrificial offering to the gods.
2,000-year-old fig. Irish archaeologists have made a surprising discovery when they found the charred remains of a 2,000-year-old fig tree on Drumnach Point north of Dublin. The find is important evidence that the Roman Empire, which once considered Ireland untouchable, did have an impact on its culture. Drumnach Point was a key point of contact between Ireland and Roman-ruled England. The fig was the most surprising of the finds made by researchers from University College Dublin. The seeds of the fruit confirm that it was brought to the island at a time when such exotic fruits were considered rare. Figs had previously only been found in medieval strata in Ireland, but this is the oldest known. As well as the figs, traces of spelt were found, a grain widely consumed in Roman Britain but rare in Ireland. The finds show that the Romans not only traded goods but also transferred lifestyles. Archaeologist Christine Baker said that the people of Ireland at the time enjoyed spelt bread, olive oil, wine in used glass, and ceramic dishes, brooches, and beads. Figs, first grown in eastern Turkey and northern India, were carried by ancient trade routes to the Mediterranean, where they became an important part of the Roman diet. Researchers believe that figs and spelt may have been brought through Roman Chester, a major trading post in Britain. Indian airplanes. Amazing artifacts known as Indian airplanes have been found in Mexico and South America. These miniature gold figures, dating back hundreds, perhaps thousands of years, are striking in their detail. At first glance, they are toys, but their shape is too reminiscent of modern aircraft such as space shuttles or airplanes. Scientists were especially drawn to the tail rudders, symmetrical notches on the wings, and other elements that would have no practical use in a toy. The question arises, what was the basis for creating these figures? The only plausible explanation is that the craftsmen copied what they saw. Perhaps these artifacts are a reflection of real events when the inhabitants of ancient America observed the flights of mysterious devices. Some researchers associate these finds with theories about ancient astronauts, claiming that aliens, the Anunnaki or representatives of another civilization, visited Earth and left their traces. The mystery of these little planes is enhanced by another fact. Modern engineers have been able to create models based on these artifacts that, with the addition of an engine, are actually capable of flying. Is this a coincidence, an ancient myth, or evidence of technology that came from other planets?
The meteorite that changed the course of Christianity. Abruzzo, central Italy, about 100 kilometers from Rome. In the mountains, there is a round lake called Sorrente, about 140 meters in diameter. Geologists believe that this is a meteorite crater. Radiocarbon dating of charred wood from the emissions gives a date of about 312 AD. This is the time of Constantine's battle at the Milvian Bridge. Swedish researcher Jens Ormo has proposed a simple version. A bright bolide and a dust mushroom cloud could look like a shining sign in the sky. Eusebius of Caesarea describes a vision of a cross of light, after which Constantine ordered the symbol to be applied to shields and won. Calculations give an energy of about 1 kiloton, comparable to a small nuclear warhead. The flash was visible from very far away. There are indirect traces in the archaeology nearby. A village deserted in the 4th century, mass graves in the catacombs, local legends about a star sun that split the oaks. There is no direct evidence linking meteorite to Constantine's vision. It is a hypothesis, but the coincidence of dates, scale, and visibility makes it one of the most convincing. A natural phenomenon could have become the trigger for the decision after which Christianity was legalized throughout the Roman Empire. The mystery of the flying stones. India is always shrouded in secrets and mysteries. In any corner of it, you can encounter something amazing and incredible. Many come here for new experiences, to discover unknown spiritual possibilities in themselves. Once you have visited this amazing country, it is impossible to forget it. One of the mysteries of India is the levitating stones in the small village of Shivapur, which is located 200 kilometers from Bombay. Near the local temple, there are several boulders whose weight exceeds 50 kilograms. These stones, according to local residents, can rise into the air. It takes 11 men to lift the first, heavier stone. They must stand around it and say certain words. After this, the stone begins to levitate and can be held with one finger. The smaller boulder requires 9 men to lift. There is also a third stone weighing over 60 kilograms, which only the monks of the temple can lift. The origin of these stones is mysterious. Some believe they were sent by the gods, others think they broke off from a nearby rock. A local resident who takes care of the temple claims that the stones break from time to time, and he replaces them with new ones by chipping them from the rock. But even new stones retain their flying properties. Some scientists suggest that ancient people were able to move objects with the power of thought, as, for example, during the construction of the Egyptian pyramids. The knowledge of levitation may have been lost, but sometimes resurfaces in places like Shivapur. Interestingly, in the last century, Edward Leedskalnin, an immigrant from Latvia, used similar methods to build his coral castle in Florida, which only confirms the existence of such knowledge. These unexplained phenomena support the hypothesis of extraterrestrial influence on ancient civilizations, suggesting that some technologies or methods may have been transmitted to humanity by representatives of other worlds. Secret Manhattan Project. There is one type of weapon in the world, the presence of which radically changes the country's position on the geopolitical map of the world: atomic weapons. During the dark times of World War II, when the world was divided by terrible events, a group of eminent scientists gathered in a secret location to work on a project that could radically change the course of history. This project was called Manhattan, the mission to create the first atomic bomb. It was a race against time and science, where the stakes were higher than ever. The spark that ignited the Manhattan Project came from a small group of Jewish refugees who came to the United States seeking refuge from Nazi Germany. They warned that atomic weapons were being developed in Berlin. Surprisingly, all information about this development was open and available for study. But behind these great scientific discoveries and engineering achievements lay a deep inner struggle. Newly discovered personal letters and diaries of scientists who worked on the project provide new insight into their experiences and thoughts. These documents recount the doubts and ethical dilemmas these men faced as they weighed the consequences of their inventions. In their notes, one can find questions about the morality of creating weapons of such destructive power and about the future of humanity after their use. Scientists asked the question, are we saving the world by creating such weapons, or are we opening a Pandora's box whose consequences cannot be reversed? These letters and diaries give us a glimpse into the souls of the people behind one of the most significant and controversial scientific advances in history. They show that even in the process of creating great inventions, scientists remained first and foremost people, with fear, doubt, and hope. The scientists worked under the guidance of physicist Robert Oppenheimer, who a few years later would be called the father of atomic weapons. Just recently, a movie was even made on this topic.
Supernatural destruction of Mohenjo-daro. In 1922, an officer from the Archaeological Survey of India, along with a Buddhist monk, went to the area, which turned out to be a religious monument. Instead of mounds of mud and stones, an entire Bronze Age city with a grid of streets, complex drainage systems, and flush toilets was discovered in Sindh, modern-day Pakistan. The city was part of the Harappan civilization, which reached its peak 5,000 years ago and ceased to exist around 1900 BC. The Mound of the Dead is the legacy of one of the oldest civilizations. The inhabitants of Mohenjo-daro were in no way inferior to Egypt and ancient Mesopotamia. Once upon a time, this region was inhabited by about 35,000 people, but archaeologists managed to find only 43 skeletons that have survived to this day. The city's disappearance was mysterious, but in 1977, a British researcher discovered evidence suggesting it was caused by a massive explosion. Melted rocks and calcified skeletons suggest that the inhabitants of Mohenjo-daro died instantly. In 2014, a doctor of mineralogy conducted a series of analyses and tests which suggests a connection between the Harappan civilization and aliens. This is indicated not only by the high level of development of the local residents, but also by the fact that they burned at a temperature of several thousand degrees. There are no volcanoes here, and the technology to reach such temperatures did not exist.
What do ancient shells sound like? Large seashells have long been found at archaeological sites in northeastern Spain. They were thought to be ordinary food scraps until researchers noticed one strange detail. All the shells had their tops carefully removed. This is exactly what is done if the object is intended to be used not as a vessel, but as a horn. Scientists decided to test this. They took 12 shells, approximately 6,000 years old, and tried blowing into them. The result was unexpected. The sound wasn't just audible, it reached a volume of up to 111 decibels. That's the level of a car horn or a chainsaw. Analysis revealed that the shells were collected empty. Traces of marine organisms inside indicated that no one was eating the snails. People were interested in the sound itself. Such signals could be heard over long distances and used for communication, warnings, or rituals. No images, no inscriptions, no text, only the shape, the breath, and the sound that had echoed across the landscape thousands of years ago, and that could be heard again.
tiny mummy in the Atacama. 20 years ago, in an abandoned mountain town in the Atacama Desert in Chile, the mummified remains of a humanoid just 15 centimeters in size were found. When this skeleton fell into the hands of a private collector in Spain, it sparked controversy about its origins and even appeared in a documentary as possible evidence of alien life. Scientists from California have been able to extract DNA from the bones of a mummy and reconstruct the real and tragic history of this creature, which received the name Ata. It turned out that this is not a guest from another world, but a girl who apparently was born dead or died immediately after birth, with terrifying mutations that determined her unusual physique. Despite the fact that she was only 15 centimeters long, some features of the bones indicated an age of 6 to 8 years. Instead of the usual 12 pairs of ribs, Ata had only 10. The head was elongated and cone-shaped. Professor Harry Nolan, who conducted the study, believes that Ata was stillborn or died immediately after birth. Her deformities were so severe that she could not eat. In her condition, she would have been admitted to a neonatal intensive care unit, but such devices simply were not available at the site where her remains were found. It all started as a story about aliens, but in fact it is a story about a human tragedy. A woman gave birth to a deformed child which was preserved and sold as a strange artifact. In the end, this turned out to be a person with an amazing genetic history from which we can learn a lot that will help others. Mars, our second home? It seems that just a little bit more, and we will really get to Mars. SpaceX is already building rockets for flights, NASA is testing life support systems, China is preparing for its missions. Loud plans are in the news. The first people will land on the red planet in the coming decades. Colonies, domes, resource extraction, greenhouses. It all sounds like the beginning of a new era, but Mars has its dark sides. Radiation will kill a person in a few months. The atmosphere consists almost entirely of carbon dioxide, and sandstorms can last for weeks. To survive there, humanity will have to not only build bases, but completely rebuild the very idea of life. This is not moving to a new land. This is existence on a hostile planet. And yet the main question is different. What if we are not the first there? Photos from Mars rovers again and again cause controversy. Strange stone formations like ruins, objects similar to statues or mechanisms. Scientists call it pareidolia, the way our brains see familiar shapes. But if even some of these finds are real, then Mars's history could be much more eventful. And maybe when we get there, we won't build a new home. We'll just return to the old one. UFO in the USSR. At the end of the USSR and after its collapse, UFOs became a frequent topic of discussion. Residents regularly reported strange objects in the sky, special shows were shown on television, and urban myths circulated among people. Some UFO evidence involved secret missile tests that the general public was unaware of. In the 70s to 80s, stories about UFOs spread in the USSR. There were legends about a UFO crash in Yakutia in the 70s, a UFO explosion on the Kola Peninsula in 1981, and its destruction by a nuclear installation in Kazakhstan in 1983. Another story tells about mushroom pickers who allegedly photographed the interior of a flying saucer and then their traces were lost. There are even photographs that supposedly prove a UFO crash in the USSR, but upon closer examination they raise doubts. Soviet UFOs were more likely a manifestation of mass self-hypnosis rather than evidence of extraterrestrial civilizations. There have also been cases in the United States when UFOs were caught on video, including those filmed by the military. For example, in July 2019, an unidentified object was spotted near the USS Omaha. The Pentagon suggests that UFOs may be of extraterrestrial origin. Even astronauts on the ISS observed strange objects, but often these turned out to be satellites. In the United States, there is laser equipment capable of creating plasma images that are sometimes mistaken for UFOs. But even with all these explanations, some cases remain a mystery. What do you think is really behind the UFO phenomenon? Fantasy, technology, or something else? Write your versions under the video, and I will be glad if you subscribe to the channel and watch my next video, which I am already preparing for you. Thanks for your views. Bye, everyone.